Story: The Haunting of Blackwood Street. Dark clouds gathered ominously over Blackwood Street as Sarah and John, a young couple new to the town, pulled up to their new home, a charming, albeit slightly decrepit, old house. The rain began to fall in heavy sheets, casting a gloomy shroud over the quaint neighborhood. The house had an air of nostalgia about it, with ivy-clad walls, creaky floorboards, and the smell of time-worn wood. Despite its charm, something about it felt unsettling. "Isn't it perfect, John?" Sarah exclaimed, her enthusiasm barely masking the nervousness she felt. "It's a fixer-upper, all right," John replied, a forced smile on his face. They had no idea just how much fixing up it needed. Their neighbor, Mrs. Abigail, was a frail and mysterious elderly woman with haunting, pale blue eyes. She had lived on Blackwood Street for as long as anyone could remember. She stood at her window, her piercing gaze following the young couple as they entered their new home. Mrs. Abigail had seen many neighbors come and go over the years, but there was something about this house that had kept her rooted in place. As Sarah and John began to settle into their new life, strange occurrences plagued them. Doors that were locked would mysteriously open. Whispers echoed through empty hallways, and shadows danced in the corners of their vision. Sarah found an old diary hidden in the attic, written by a previous resident of the house. It was filled with cryptic entries that spoke of a malevolent presence in the very walls of the home. The diary mentioned the Wailing Lady, a nameless, tormented spirit bound to the house. She was a lost soul, seeking solace in her eternal sorrow. Sarah couldn't help but shudder as she read through the entries. One evening, as the wind howled outside and rain lashed against the windows, Sarah awoke to the sound of weeping. John was fast asleep beside her. She got out of bed, following the mournful cries through the darkened house. The wailing led her to the attic, where a spectral figure stood in the feeble moonlight that filtered through a dusty window. The figure, a woman in a tattered gown, appeared translucent, her eyes filled with a deep, sorrowful longing. She reached out towards Sarah, and Sarah could feel an overwhelming sense of despair emanating from her. "Who are you?" Sarah whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. The Wailing Lady's spectral lips quivered as if struggling to form words. She pointed towards a hidden compartment in the diary, an entry that Sarah had not yet read. Trembling, Sarah opened it. The entry told of the Wailing Lady's tragic fate. She had once been a resident of Blackwood Street, in the very house that Sarah and John now called home. Long ago, she had fallen in love with a man who promised her a future, but that man had betrayed her, leaving her heartbroken and alone. Consumed by grief, she had ended her own life in the very attic where her spirit now resided. Sarah realized that the Wailing Lady's pain was inexorably linked to the house, to its history, and to the betrayal that had led to her suffering. She also realized that she needed to find a way to set her free. The next day, Sarah and John sought out Mrs. Abigail, who had seen many tenants come and go, and she knew the secrets of the house. With reluctance, she told them the grim truth about their home's history. Blackwood Street had once been a town under the shadow of a terrible tragedy. 100 years ago, the townspeople had turned their backs on the Wailing Lady, allowing her to suffer in silence. They believed she brought misfortune to the town, and as a result, the curse of Blackwood Street had persisted. Sarah and John knew what they needed to do. They researched old rituals and contacted mediums. They were determined to set the Wailing Lady free and cleanse the house of its dark history. The night they performed the ritual was stormy, much like the night the Wailing Lady had first appeared. A circle of candles surrounded them in the attic, and the diary lay open. Sarah read aloud a passage from the diary, calling upon the Wailing Lady to release her pain and let go of the house. The room grew cold, and the candles flickered as the Wailing Lady appeared once more. Her weeping grew louder and more sorrowful, filling the room with anguish. "Please, be free," Sarah begged, tears streaming down her face. "You deserve peace." As if hearing her plea, the Wailing Lady's form began to dissipate. The mournful cries grew softer, and then she was gone. A profound silence filled the attic. The storm outside subsided, and an eerie calm descended over Blackwood Street. The curse that had hung over the house for a century was finally broken. The air felt lighter, and the house, once filled with dread, was now a place of peace. Mrs. Abigail, who had watched from her window, approached Sarah and John, her eyes no longer carrying that haunting look. "Thank you," she said with a faint smile. "You've given Blackwood Street a chance to heal." The young couple, now free from the sinister presence, could finally enjoy the charm of their home without the creeping sense of dread. They knew that in setting the Wailing Lady free, they had also released the town from its dark past. As the years went by, Blackwood Street flourished, and its once cursed house became a symbol of healing and hope. Sarah and John had not only saved their home but had also brought peace to the Wailing Lady, who could finally rest in eternal tranquility. Story: The Pumpkin Patch Phantoms. The air on Halloween night was crisp, and the full moon cast an eerie glow over the small town of Hollisville. Children in colorful costumes paraded the streets, their laughter echoing in the night. But at the edge of town, a desolate pumpkin patch lay in darkness, shrouded in an unsettling stillness. Timmy, a curious 10-year-old with a mop of unruly hair, had always been drawn to the mysterious pumpkin patch. It sat at the outskirts of town, and every year it seemed more desolate and uncared for. The townsfolk whispered that the patch was cursed, and nobody dared to venture there after dark. But Timmy was different. He loved mysteries and couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. Dressed as a brave knight, he sneaked away from the vibrant Halloween festivities and made his way to the patch. The moonlight revealed withered pumpkins, their eerie grins seeming to come to life as Timmy approached. He reached out and plucked one, a particularly sinister-looking pumpkin with jagged, malevolent eyes and a wicked grin. Little did Timmy know that he had just awakened the phantoms tied to the pumpkin. The ground trembled, and the pumpkin patch came to life. From the earth, ghostly apparitions of children, long departed, emerged. Their hollow eyes were filled with anger, and they circled Timmy, whispering mournful tales of their fate. "You've taken our souls," one of the phantoms whispered. "You've chosen the cursed one," another hissed. Timmy was frozen with fear. He had unwittingly taken a cursed pumpkin, and now he was at the mercy of the vengeful spirits. The phantoms were the children who had been lured into the pumpkin patch years ago by Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, the patch's sinister owners. The Thompsons had promised endless treats in exchange for their souls, then left them trapped in a never-ending Halloween night. The phantoms were desperate for release. They told Timmy of the only way to break the curse: find the heart of the patch and perform a ritual under the full moon on Halloween night. Only then would the souls of the children find rest, and the curse on the patch would be lifted. With newfound determination, Timmy agreed to help the phantoms. The ghosts led him deep into the patch, where an ancient oak tree stood. Its gnarled branches twisted grotesquely in the moonlight. There, they explained, was the heart of the patch. It was the place where the Thompsons had made their sinister pact with the spirits. Timmy began the ritual, guided by the phantoms. He dug a hole at the base of the tree and placed the cursed pumpkin inside. He recited incantations, and the earth trembled once more. The roots of the oak tree came to life, coiling around the pumpkin. Timmy's heart pounded as the ground shook, and the ghosts chanted with him, their voices echoing in the night. Suddenly, a piercing scream cut through the air. It was Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, who had sensed the disturbance in the pumpkin patch. They rushed to the oak tree, their eyes filled with anger and fear. "You meddling child," Mrs. Thompson screeched. The spirits of the trapped children surrounded Timmy, protecting him from the wrath of the Thompsons. The air crackled with tension as the forces of good and evil clashed. In a final, climactic battle, the phantoms released their pent-up anger, pushing the Thompsons back. The curse, which the sinister couple had maintained for so long, began to unravel. With one last incantation, Timmy sealed the pumpkin in the heart of the patch. The ground rumbled, and the curse broke, releasing the souls of the children who had been trapped for so long. The phantoms' ethereal forms began to fade away, but they did so with peaceful smiles, finally free. The Thompsons, on the other hand, were consumed by the curse they had inflicted upon others. Their forms twisted and contorted, and they were dragged beneath the earth, condemned to spend eternity with the malevolent pumpkins they had created. With the curse lifted, the pumpkin patch regained its former beauty. The wicked grins on the pumpkins softened, and they became a symbol of the patch's dark past. Timmy had redeemed the pumpkin patch, breaking the cycle of greed and betrayal that had plagued it for so long. As the sun began to rise, Timmy made his way back to town. He had saved the children and put an end to the dark legacy of the Thompsons. Halloween night in Hollowsville would never be the same. The air was now filled with a sense of wonder and magic, and the pumpkin patch, once cursed, was now a place of redemption and hope. Story: The Masquerade of Madness. Halloween night in the quaint town of Ravensbrook was a time of vivid costumes, mirthful laughter, and the mysterious allure of hidden identities. Emily, a teenager with a passion for adventure and a heart eager for mystery, was drawn to an exclusive event known as the Masquerade of Madness. Alongside her best friend, Lisa, they set out on an eerie, moonlit night to attend this enigmatic gathering. The venue was a sprawling mansion shrouded in ivy and shrouded in an eerie fog. Emily and Lisa, resplendent in their elegant gowns, entered the dimly lit ballroom. The room was bathed in an ominous crimson glow, its walls adorned with sinister, arcane symbols, and the air was thick with secrets. Attendees were clad in exquisite, ornate masks that concealed their true faces. "Isn't this thrilling?" Emily whispered to Lisa, her eyes gleaming with excitement. The partygoers moved in graceful waltzes and enchanting minuets, their masks granting them an air of anonymity. It was as if they were dancing in a grand illusion, where reality blurred and identities merged. Emily and Lisa couldn't help but feel a sense of disquiet as they navigated through the crowd. As the night unfolded, a sense of unease gnawed at them. The guests wore masks with eerie visages, phantoms, harlequins, and ghouls. Emily spotted a mask with hollow eyes and jagged teeth, while Lisa saw a mask that resembled a twisted jester's grin. Emily and Lisa decided to approach the enigmatic host, a figure cloaked in shadow, whose mask was an eerie representation of a raven in flight. He extended an invitation to dance, and they accepted, but with trepidation. The masked host guided them through a macabre, hypnotic waltz, where the line between pleasure and fear blurred. As they danced, they felt the chilling presence of hidden agendas, deceit, and malevolent intent. The enigmatic host's every step was precise, his movements graceful yet ominous, and his mask held an inscrutable gaze. "I don't like this, Emily," Lisa whispered, her voice quivering. Emily nodded in agreement, feeling the same unease. They had unknowingly stepped into a world where masks concealed not only faces but also secrets that threatened to unravel their reality. As the night deepened, Emily and Lisa ventured into a hidden chamber, guided by whispers from the other partygoers. There, they discovered a collection of masks, twisted, grotesque, and diabolical. It was as if the masks were a reflection of the darkest corners of human nature. One mask, in particular, drew their attention. It was a mask of betrayal, its expression filled with sorrow and deceit. As Emily held it in her hands, a shiver ran down her spine. She felt as though it was watching her, probing the depths of her soul. The shocking revelation came when they overheard a conversation between the enigmatic host and another guest. They spoke of a sinister ritual, the culmination of the Masquerade of Madness, where the masks would reveal the true nature of the guests. Emily and Lisa were horrified to learn that the masks they wore were not mere adornments. They held the power to unmask the darkest corners of their souls. Desperation gripped them as they realized that the sinister intentions of the host were now laid bare. They had to find a way to escape the masquerade before the night descended into madness. The chase through the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion was filled with tension and uncertainty. Their footsteps echoed like the heartbeats of the condemned as they sought an exit. Emily and Lisa's elegant gowns, once symbols of grace, were now heavy shackles that threatened to betray their escape. In the end, it was their wits and determination that led them to a concealed exit. With a burst of courage, they pushed their way out into the chilling night. As they emerged into the moonlight, they tore off their masks, the symbols of the masquerade, and cast them aside. The mansion, bathed in an eerie, malevolent glow, seemed to disintegrate into the fog. Emily and Lisa watched from a safe distance as it crumbled into the night, taking with it the secrets, deceit, and darkness that had pervaded the masquerade. They realized that the masks they had worn were not mere adornments but revelations of the hidden aspects of their own natures. They had narrowly escaped the madness that had threatened to consume them. As they made their way back to the safety of Ravensbrook, they shared a bond forged in the crucible of the masquerade. They knew that the masks we wear, whether in the form of physical disguises or hidden agendas, can reveal the deepest and darkest aspects of our souls. They had glimpsed the true nature of deceit and malevolence and emerged with a newfound understanding of the danger of the masks we all wear in the masquerade of life. Story: The Curse of the Forgotten Carnival. The sun dipped below the horizon on Halloween night, casting long shadows over the eerie, abandoned carnival grounds. The faded and tattered banners fluttered in the chilly wind, and the cracked, once colorful booths stood in disrepair. The carnival had once been a beacon of laughter and excitement, but it had fallen into disuse and disrepair, now serving as a ghostly reminder of its former glory. Alex, a seasoned paranormal investigator, stood at the entrance, his flashlight casting an uncertain beam into the darkness. He had heard tales of the forgotten carnival and its dark history, tales of restless spirits that still roamed the grounds. Tonight, he had come to uncover the truth. The carnival had been a Halloween tradition, a place of enchantment and wonder, but the dark allure of a particular magic show had ensnared the town, captivating them in a never-ending performance. The magician, a shadowy figure known as the illusionist, promised to make their darkest dreams come true. In exchange, he demanded their souls. As Alex delved deeper into the carnival, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The air was filled with ghostly echoes of laughter and eerie, haunting music. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched by unseen eyes. He approached a decrepit carousel, its once vibrant animals now reduced to fading remnants of their former glory. As he looked at the empty seats, he imagined the specters of children who had once reveled in the thrill of the ride, now trapped in an eternal, twisted carnival. The creaking of a rusty Ferris wheel caught his attention, and he turned to see the empty carts swaying eerily in the wind. The laughter of phantom riders echoed through the night. The carnival had trapped them in its sinister grip, and they remained bound to its nightmarish reality. As Alex continued his investigation, he sensed the presence of something malevolent. He began to hear whispers that slithered through the night, sinister voices that taunted him. The spirits that had once enjoyed the carnival's offerings were not pleased with his intrusion. "Illusionist awaits you," the whispers hissed. Alex was drawn toward the sinister big top, its crimson and black stripes resembling a monstrous, hungry maw. The tent flaps swayed invitingly, despite the lack of wind. With each step, the atmosphere grew heavier, and the night itself seemed to warp around him. Inside, the big top was a grotesque theater of horrors. The abandoned seats were now occupied by spectral figures, their hollow eyes locked onto Alex. At the center of the stage stood the illusionist, a tall, ominous figure shrouded in darkness. The illusionist beckoned to Alex, his fingers gnarled and skeletal. "Join the show," he rasped, his voice dripping with malevolence. "I'm not here to join your cursed carnival," Alex retorted, his voice quivering. The illusionist's eyes glowed with a sinister light, and he raised a skeletal hand. The carnival itself seemed to come alive, the darkness coalescing into grotesque creatures. They advanced upon Alex, a nightmarish parade of horrors. With a deep breath, Alex raised his flashlight, and its beam illuminated the spectral figures, causing them to hiss and retreat into the shadows. Desperation gripped him as he realized that he needed to escape the cursed carnival, but the illusionist and his malevolent followers would not make it easy. As Alex ran through the twisted maze of tents and attractions, he heard the deranged laughter of the illusionist and the restless spirits that pursued him. The carnival seemed to shift and change, creating a nightmarish labyrinth. A distorted funhouse with mirrors that twisted and distorted his reflection stood in his path. The laughter of the carnival's victims filled the air, and the reflections seemed to come to life, taunting him with grotesque versions of himself. With every twist and turn, the carnival closed in around him. The spirits seemed to be growing stronger, their determination to imprison him evident. Alex needed to find a way to break the curse that bound them to the carnival. In a moment of clarity, Alex realized that the illusionist drew his power from the carnival's corrupted magic. To break the curse, he had to confront the malevolent magician. With newfound resolve, he navigated through the nightmarish labyrinth, determined to face the illusionist and free the trapped spirits. At last, he found himself back in the big top, where the illusionist awaited. The sinister magician hissed, "You cannot escape, for the carnival is now your prison." But Alex was undeterred. With his flashlight and a courage forged in the face of unimaginable horror, he approached the stage. The illusionist unleashed a barrage of dark magic, creating grotesque illusions and twisted specters. But Alex, armed with the light of truth, held his ground. He exposed the illusionist's true form, a wretched and withered creature, drained by the dark bargain he had struck. The carnival's malevolent grip began to weaken as its source of power waned. The spirits of the trapped victims, sensing their chance at freedom, converged upon the illusionist. With their collective strength, they overcame him, and the cursed carnival began to crumble. Alex, seizing the opportunity, escaped the disintegrating big top. The carnival, once a place of enchantment and dreams turned into nightmares, now faded into obscurity. The spirits were finally released from their torment, their anguished laughter and cries now silenced. The air was filled with an eerie calm, and the cursed carnival vanished, leaving nothing but the fading memories of its dark legacy. As Halloween night in Ravensbrook continued, the town's residents felt the lingering presence of the carnival, and the cost of entertainment gone awry. Alex had ventured into a nightmarish world, where the perils of obsession and the price of indulgence had almost claimed him. He had faced the darkness of the forgotten carnival and emerged with the understanding that some mysteries were best left unexplored. Halloween night in Ravensbrook would never be the same, as the town's secrets and fears were laid bare in the darkness of the cursed carnival. Story: The Witching Hour at Elmridge Cemetery. On Halloween night, a chilling breeze rustled through the trees, and the full moon hung in the sky like a pale lantern. Elmridge Cemetery, known for its eerie reputation, stood in silence. Its darkened tombstones and gnarled trees seemed to clutch at the veil between the living and the dead. The town's stories of ghostly sightings and paranormal occurrences were legendary, and tonight, Maria, a skeptical journalist, had come to unravel the truth. Dressed in practical attire and holding a notebook and flashlight, Maria ventured into the graveyard, determined to debunk the rumors and expose the tales as mere superstitions. The ghosts, she believed, were nothing more than tricks of the imagination. She moved through the rows of tombstones, her flashlight's beam cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with an uncanny stillness, and the quietness seemed almost unnatural. Maria chuckled to herself, her skepticism unwavering. "Ghost stories are just that, stories," she muttered. But as the minutes ticked away, Maria couldn't help but notice the growing tension in the air. The shadows seemed to move on their own, and eerie whispers lingered on the wind. The night was alive with an unsettling energy, and Maria's skepticism began to waver. The clock struck midnight, and the witching hour descended upon Elmridge Cemetery. It was then that Maria's flashlight flickered, casting eerie and elongated shadows that danced across the tombstones. She attempted to fix the flashlight, but it refused to cooperate, leaving her shrouded in darkness. In the stillness, Maria heard footsteps, a strange and hollow sound, like someone walking on old leaves. Panic welled up in her as she realized she was no longer alone. She squinted into the inky blackness, her heart pounding in her chest. From the darkness emerged a spectral figure, its form translucent and ethereal. Maria's breath caught as she witnessed the ghostly apparition. It was a woman in an antiquated gown, her face a mask of sadness. Maria's skepticism had waned, replaced by a creeping sense of dread. She found herself face to face with a ghost, a restless spirit of Elmridge Cemetery. The spectral woman beckoned to her, her voice a faint whisper. "Unravel the secrets," the ghost implored. Maria's journalistic instincts took over. She approached the apparition cautiously, ready to question the spirit and uncover the truth. But what she found was a sadness that transcended the veil of death, a story of love and loss, and a curse that bound the spirits to the cemetery. The ghostly figure revealed that Elmridge Cemetery had been a site of tragic events in the past. A century ago, a forbidden love had blossomed between a maid and the master of the grand estate, but society had torn them apart. In their despair, they made a desperate pact, cursing their love and binding their souls to the graveyard. They had become the guardians of Elmridge, protecting its secrets and its restless spirits. The ghostly maiden led Maria to an ancient crypt, its door covered in ivy and decay. There, the spirits gathered for a seance, their voices echoing through the night. Maria watched in awe as the ghosts began to tell their stories, each more heart-wrenching than the last. Amidst the chorus of ethereal voices, Maria realized that the spirits were not the malevolent beings that the town had feared. They were souls trapped in a never-ending cycle of grief, their presence fueled by their desire to finally break the curse that bound them to Elmridge. Maria had come to debunk the supernatural tales, but she now stood at the center of a paranormal revelation. The spirits sought redemption, a chance to be freed from their eternal vigil, and it was in her power to help them. As the seance continued, the spirits urged Maria to uncover the hidden history of Elmridge Cemetery and to reveal the truth to the living. It was only through understanding and compassion that the curse could be broken. Determined to bring peace to the restless souls, Maria returned to the town and dug through archives and records. What she discovered was a long-buried tale of love, tragedy, and betrayal. The love story of the maid and the master had been suppressed and erased from the town's history, but Maria was determined to shed light on it. With her findings in hand, she returned to Elmridge Cemetery and gathered the spirits. She shared their story, unearthing the truth that had been buried for so long. As she spoke, the ghostly figures began to fade, their spectral forms dissolving into the night. With each fading apparition, the curse was slowly lifted, and the cemetery seemed to sigh in relief. The tombstones, once oppressive, now bore an air of tranquility. Elmridge Cemetery was no longer haunted by its dark past. Maria had helped the spirits find peace, and the town would no longer live in fear of its eerie legends. The moon began to wane, and the night lost its eerie glow. Maria watched as the spirits departed, their restless souls finally finding solace. Elmridge Cemetery was no longer a place of dread but a reminder of the persistence of the past and the power of compassion to free even the most tormented souls. As Halloween night drew to a close, the town's perception of Elmridge Cemetery shifted. The haunting stories that had once fueled their fears were now replaced by a deeper understanding and a sense of respect for the history that lay within its grounds. Maria's encounter with the spirits had left an indelible mark on her, a reminder that sometimes the line between the living and the dead was thinner than we dared to imagine. Story: The Shadows in the Cornfield. Halloween night had arrived, and the full moon cast an eerie glow over the rural town of Halloweekend. Jake and Amanda, a young couple in search of adventure, found themselves drawn to the desolation of an abandoned cornfield that had become a local legend. Stories of ghostly apparitions and sinister shadows had piqued their curiosity, and they decided to explore it for themselves. The cornfield stretched before them like an endless labyrinth, its rows of tall, withered stalks appearing as a sinister army. The night was thick with silence, and the only sound was the rustling of corn leaves in the wind. Jake and Amanda, hand in hand, ventured into the field with a sense of trepidation. The further they delved into the cornfield, the more disoriented they became. The rows of stalks seemed to stretch in all directions, making it difficult to discern their path. The moonlight, once their guiding beacon, was now obscured by the dense canopy of corn. Amanda tried to keep her composure, but her voice trembled as she spoke. "I thought this would be fun, Jake, but I'm starting to feel really lost." Jake squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Don't worry, Amanda. We'll find our way out. Just stay close." As they continued to navigate the cornfield, the night seemed to grow darker, and a sense of claustrophobia closed in around them. The rows of corn felt like towering walls, and the world outside the field became an increasingly distant memory. The sense of isolation was overwhelming. They couldn't see beyond the stalks, and the eerie silence of the night pressed upon them. Amanda couldn't help but feel a growing unease, as if the very field itself was alive and closing in on them. In the distance, a faint whisper carried through the night, sending shivers down their spines. They strained to hear, their senses heightened by fear. The whisper grew louder, and they realized it was a soft, haunting melody like a lullaby sung by the wind. "I don't like this," Amanda said, her voice quivering. "It feels like we're being watched." But Jake dismissed her fears, attributing the eerie whispers to the wind and their own anxiety. They pressed on, their footsteps muffled by the carpet of fallen leaves beneath the cornstalks. As the night deepened, the shadows cast by the moonlight grew longer and more sinister. They danced and flickered, taking on the shape of grotesque figures that seemed to stretch toward Jake and Amanda. The couple felt an oppressive sense of being pursued, though they could never quite catch a glimpse of their pursuers. The whispers grew louder and more malevolent, as if the shadows themselves were mocking their fear. Amanda clung to Jake, her heart pounding. "We need to get out of here, Jake, now." But just as they turned to retrace their steps, the cornfield seemed to shift and change, its rows rearranging themselves like a living maze. Panic set in as they realized they were well and truly lost in a nightmarish labyrinth. The shadows, once distant, were now closer, stretching out from the cornstalks like skeletal fingers. The eerie lullaby was now a haunting melody that seemed to resonate within their very souls. Amanda's grip on Jake's hand tightened. "We can't stay here. We need to find a way out, Jake." Jake agreed, his own fear intensifying. They chose a direction and began to move, though they couldn't be certain if it was the way they had come. The whispers and shadows pursued them, growing louder and more menacing with each step. The darkness pressed upon them from all sides, and Amanda stumbled, falling to the ground. Jake helped her up, but as he did, the shadows closed in, their fingers reaching for her. The eerie melody crescendoed, becoming a deafening cacophony that filled their ears. Desperation fueled their flight through the cornfield. With each turn and each step, they felt the oppressive presence of the shadows. The darkness seemed to come alive, an entity that was determined to consume them. But just as hope seemed to wane, they stumbled upon a clearing within the field. In the center stood an old, crumbling scarecrow, its tattered clothing flapping in the wind. Without hesitation, Jake and Amanda embraced the scarecrow, hoping it would offer protection from the shadows. As the shadows closed in, the scarecrow seemed to come to life. It stretched out its arms, casting a protective shadow over the couple. The eerie melody that had haunted them now changed, becoming a defiant, ethereal tune that echoed through the night. The scarecrow's presence held the shadows at bay, and the couple's terror began to ebb. The darkness that had pursued them slowly retreated, its whispers fading into the night. As dawn approached, the shadows vanished entirely, and the cornfield took on a more familiar appearance. Jake and Amanda, shaken but alive, looked at each other with a newfound appreciation for their bond and their shared ordeal. They ventured out of the cornfield, leaving the shadows and the eerie whispers behind. The terror of the night had tested their relationship, but they emerged with a deeper understanding of their connection and the fragility of their existence. Halloween night in Halloweekend would forever be haunted by the memory of the shadows in the cornfield, a testament to the fear of isolation and the resilience of the human spirit when faced with the unknown. Story: The Curse of Ravenwood Manor. A chilling wind swept through the desolate town of Halloweekend, where an imposing structure known as Ravenwood Manor loomed on the outskirts. It was a mansion that had long been shrouded in a sinister reputation, its dark history whispered about in hushed tones. Daniel and Rebecca, a fearless paranormal investigation team, had come to uncover the truth behind the malevolent spirits that were said to haunt the mansion. Little did they know that their curiosity would unleash a night of terror. The moon hung low in the sky as the investigators stood before the grand entrance of Ravenwood Manor. Its shadowy silhouette seemed to stare down at them with an air of foreboding. Daniel adjusted the straps of his backpack, and Rebecca clutched her camera tightly, ready to document their findings. As they entered the mansion, the air grew thick and oppressive. The walls of Ravenwood Manor held the memories of countless dark deeds, and the rooms seemed to exude an eerie atmosphere. The creaking floorboards underfoot echoed through the mansion like a mournful cry. The investigators had heard tales of a forbidden room within the mansion, a place that had never been opened. They had come with the intention of unraveling the mystery and uncovering the truth. As they ventured deeper into the house, the oppressive ambience seemed to intensify. Rebecca whispered to Daniel. "This place gives me the creeps. Are you sure we should be here?" But Daniel's curiosity was insatiable, and he pushed forward. "We have to see it through. The truth about this place needs to be revealed." Their search for the forbidden room led them to a grand hallway with portraits of solemn-faced individuals lining the walls. Each figure seemed to watch them with eyes that followed their every move. At the end of the hallway, they discovered a heavy oak door, its surface etched with cryptic symbols and inscriptions. The door, they had been told, was the gateway to the forbidden room. With trembling hands, they pushed it open, revealing a room that had been untouched for centuries. Dusty furniture, faded tapestries, and aged books filled the chamber. But at the center of the room stood a sinister-looking mirror that seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy. Rebecca felt a sense of dread wash over her. "This mirror, Daniel, it feels wrong. Like it's a doorway to something we can't comprehend." Daniel, however, approached the mirror with an intense fascination. As he gazed into its depths, he saw strange visions and ghostly apparitions. The room seemed to warp and shift around him, and he became entranced by the mirror's supernatural allure. The mirror's surface began to ripple, and Daniel's reflection transformed into a sinister doppelganger. It reached out from the mirror, grabbing Daniel's arm with a spectral hand. Panic overcame him as he realized he was being pulled into the mirror, his own reflection intent on replacing him in the physical world. Rebecca watched in horror as Daniel struggled to break free, his desperate pleas echoing through the chamber. With every ounce of her strength, she pulled him away from the mirror's grasp, causing the spectral doppelganger to retreat. The mirror's surface settled, returning to its eerie, pulsating calm. Shaken and terrified, Daniel and Rebecca realized they had unwittingly unleashed the malevolent spirits that had been trapped within the mirror. The supernatural entities, once confined to the glass, were now free to roam the mansion. As darkness descended over Ravenwood Manor, the investigators could hear the whispers of the spirits, their voices filled with bitterness and malice. The apparitions of long-deceased residents of the mansion appeared before them, their faces twisted in agony and despair. The spirits seemed to take pleasure in tormenting Daniel and Rebecca, subjecting them to a night of terror that tested the limits of their endurance. They were pursued through the mansion's labyrinthine corridors, each shadowy figure a reminder of the mansion's sinister history. Rebecca tried to capture the haunting events with her camera, but the images appeared distorted and twisted, reflecting the malevolent presence that surrounded them. The investigators had opened a doorway to the supernatural, and the consequences of their curiosity were devastating. With every encounter, the spirits grew stronger, their determination to claim the investigators' souls evident. Daniel and Rebecca were exhausted, their bodies and minds pushed to the brink. The mansion had become a nightmarish prison, and their escape seemed impossible. But as the spirits closed in, the investigators discovered a faint ray of hope. Within the forbidden room, the sinister mirror that had been the source of their torment still pulsed with supernatural energy. It was a conduit to the spirits' power, and it was the key to ending their reign of terror. With their last reserves of strength, Daniel and Rebecca approached the mirror. They confronted the malevolent spirits, demanding that they release their grip on the mansion and its inhabitants. The spirits, bound by the mirror's dark magic, had no choice but to comply. As Daniel and Rebecca channeled their willpower, the mirror's surface shattered, releasing a blinding burst of light that engulfed the room. The spirits screamed in agony as they were drawn back into the fractured mirror. With the spirits defeated, the oppressive atmosphere that had shrouded Ravenwood Manor lifted, and the mansion returned to a state of eerie stillness. The investigators emerged from the forbidden room, their bodies battered and their minds scarred by the night's horrors. As they left the mansion, the weight of the curse that had plagued Ravenwood Manor seemed to dissipate. The spirits had been returned to their spectral prison, and the mansion was now a place of silence, free from the malevolence that had haunted it for centuries. Halloween night in Halloweekend would always be remembered as the night when the curse of Ravenwood Manor had been lifted, a chilling reminder of the consequences of meddling with the supernatural and the price of curiosity. The investigators had confronted the malevolent spirits and survived, but the memory of that night would haunt them forever. Story: The Halloweekend Cabin. In the heart of a dense forest, shrouded in the chill of late October, stood a remote cabin that had long been abandoned. It was a place that locals spoke of in hushed tones, and superstitions surrounded it. On Halloween weekend, a group of friends sought a secluded retreat far from the trappings of civilization. They believed it would be an adventure filled with camaraderie, but they had no idea that the cabin held a malevolent force that would test their bonds and confront them with their darkest fears. The group consisted of Sarah, Mark, Lisa, and Ben, a close-knit circle of friends who had grown up together. They saw this getaway as a chance to escape the monotony of everyday life and create unforgettable memories. But as they approached the cabin, Nestled amidst the towering trees, an unsettling sense of isolation began to creep over them. The cabin's facade was weathered and worn, its windows boarded up as if to keep something out, or perhaps to keep something in. Inside, cobwebs draped the corners, and a musty odor lingered in the air. The place had a sense of abandonment that sent a shiver down their spines, but they dismissed it as mere superstition. As night fell, they gathered around a flickering fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. But the warmth of their camaraderie couldn't dispel the oppressive atmosphere that had settled over the cabin. Shadows danced on the walls, and the wind howled outside like a mournful wail. Strange occurrences began to unfold. Objects moved on their own, and eerie whispers echoed through the halls. The group members tried to dismiss these events as mere figments of their imagination, products of the eerie setting. But their unease grew with each passing hour. One night, as they settled into their sleeping bags, they heard footsteps echoing through the cabin. Sarah's eyes widened in fear. Did anyone else hear that? Mark shrugged it off, trying to maintain a facade of courage. Probably just some critter outside. Nothing to worry about. But as they lay in the darkness, the footsteps grew louder, closer. They realized that whatever was inside the cabin was neither critter nor figment of their imagination. Panic set in as they huddled together, their hearts pounding in unison. A malevolent force seemed to close in on them, a presence that delighted in their fear. It whispered dreadful promises and played tricks on their senses, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. Lisa felt a cold hand brush against her cheek, and Ben heard a sinister voice whisper his name in the dead of night. With each unsettling event, their bonds began to fray. Suspicion festered within the group as they cast accusatory glances at each other. Trust, once their foundation, was now a fragile thread that threatened to unravel. The malevolent force fed on their paranoia, taking the form of their deepest fears. For Sarah, it appeared as a grotesque, faceless figure that taunted her with her most profound insecurities. Mark was confronted by the ghost of his deceased sister, a specter that accused him of abandoning her in her time of need. Lisa's childhood phobia of spiders manifested as a nightmarish swarm that crawled over her. And Ben faced the darkness of his own guilt, a relentless tormentor that reminded him of past wrongs. The cabin had become a place of torment, where the friends were confronted with their most profound fears and secrets. Betrayal and mistrust tore through the group, as each member questioned the other's motives and actions. In a desperate bid to confront the malevolent entity, they gathered together one night in the cabin's center. Their breaths trembled in the frigid air as they called out to the force that plagued them. The cabin seemed to come alive, its walls groaning and shifting. Shadows danced with malevolence, mocking the friends. The entity took shape before them, its form a grotesque amalgamation of their fears. It fed on their terror, its malevolence radiating through the cabin. With a chilling voice, it whispered, "I know your secrets. I know your darkest fears." Their unity had been shattered by paranoia and mistrust, and the entity reveled in their vulnerability. It demanded that they betray one another, that they expose their darkest secrets and tear each other apart. In the cabin's claustrophobic confines, their friendships crumbled, and they faced a nightmarish decision. But as they stood on the precipice of betrayal, their bond rekindled, and they realized the true nature of the malevolent entity. It thrived on their mistrust and division, and unity was their only defense. In an act of defiance, they chose to stand together against the darkness. With renewed determination, they confronted the entity, their unity forming a barrier against its malevolence. The cabin seemed to tremble, and the entity's form wavered and faltered. It let out an agonized wail and retreated into the shadows, vanishing into the inky blackness. The friends, having faced their darkest fears and confronted the malevolent force, emerged from the cabin forever changed. The bond that had been tested and nearly broken had been reforged through their shared ordeal. The malevolent entity, vanquished by their unity, had left the cabin, but its sinister memory would haunt their Halloweekend forever. As they left the cabin behind, they walked hand in hand, their friendship stronger than ever. The malevolent force that had sought to divide and conquer had underestimated the strength of their unity, and in the end, it had been defeated by the power of their enduring bonds. Halloween night in Hollowvale would always serve as a reminder of the horrors of isolation and the resilience of friendships that endured the darkest of trials. Story: The Cursed Costume Shop. On a gloomy October evening in the heart of Hollowvale, the town's cobbled streets were bathed in the eerie glow of jack-o'-lanterns. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows seemed to grow longer, enveloping the town in an air of mystery and foreboding. It was a night when the veil between the living and the supernatural was at its thinnest. Lily, a curious teenager with a penchant for adventure, found herself wandering down a desolate alleyway. It was there that she stumbled upon an unassuming storefront, its sign reading Wicked Wonders Costume Emporium. The shop appeared out of place, as if it had materialized from another era. Drawn by her insatiable curiosity, Lily pushed open the door and stepped inside. The shop's interior was a labyrinth of racks filled with costumes of every era, from bygone eras to fantastical realms. The proprietor, an enigmatic figure whose eyes seemed to hold the secrets of the universe, regarded her with a knowing smile. "Welcome to Wicked Wonders," he said in a voice that sent shivers down Lily's spine. "We have the perfect costume for anyone who dares to enter." Lily's eyes darted from costume to costume, her heart pounding with excitement. She had always been a fan of Halloween and relished the opportunity to find the perfect costume. The shop seemed like a treasure trove of possibilities. As she browsed the racks, her fingers brushed over a costume that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly allure. It was a beautiful, ornate dress that whispered promises of enchantment. Without hesitation, she selected it, eager to try it on. The shopkeeper assisted Lily in the fitting room, where she donned the costume. The moment she looked in the mirror, she was captivated by her own reflection. The dress transformed her into an ethereal beauty, a vision of grace and allure. She twirled, the fabric billowing around her like a ghostly presence. But as she gazed at herself, Lily began to notice a subtle change. Her skin grew paler, her eyes darker, and an eerie, haunting beauty overtook her. The costume seemed to meld with her very essence, and she realized with growing horror that she had been ensnared by its curse. Panicked, she tore at the costume, struggling to remove it, but it clung to her like a second skin. The shopkeeper's sinister laughter echoed through the room as he revealed himself to be a supernatural being, a collector of souls who traded beauty for a lifetime of servitude. "You wanted perfection, my dear, and now you shall be perfect for eternity," he taunted. Lily's cries for help were met with silence as the transformation was completed. She had become a living mannequin, a cursed beauty trapped within the walls of the costume shop. Her own reflection in the mirror grinned back at her, a sinister mockery of the vibrant teenager she had once been. As the days turned into weeks, Lily watched the world outside the shop's window with growing despair. She could see the Halloween festivities and the joyous laughter of the living, but she was forever imprisoned in the shopkeeper's twisted realm. The shopkeeper had collected the souls of many like Lily, each trapped within a costume, serving as a twisted reminder of their vanity and foolishness. As the Halloween season drew to a close, the shop's sinister purpose became clear. Each cursed costume represented another trapped soul, another prisoner in the emporium of horrors. Lily's existence within the cursed costume shop became a nightmarish routine. She would stand as a lifeless mannequin during the day, her soul trapped within the costume, while at night she would come to life, her beauty and allure heightened by the curse. It was a cruel irony, as she was forced to entice new customers into selecting the cursed costumes, ensuring that more souls would be added to the shop's collection. With each new customer, Lily's heart ached with guilt and desperation. She watched as others fell victim to the allure of the costumes, and she could do nothing to warn them of the shopkeeper's malevolent intent. She could only stand as a silent witness to the darkness that consumed them. But as Halloween night approached, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. A group of friends entered the shop, their laughter and camaraderie a stark contrast to the sinister atmosphere that permeated the place. Among them was a girl named Mia, whose genuine kindness and compassion seemed to shine through the darkness. Mia's gaze fell upon Lily, and a look of empathy crossed her face. She approached the cursed costume and whispered, "I know you're in there. I can see it in your eyes." Lily, her soul filled with longing for release, stared back at Mia, silently pleading for help. Mia, undeterred by the shopkeeper's warnings, reached out and touched the cursed costume. In that moment, a powerful force of magic enveloped the room. The curse that had bound Lily to the costume began to weaken, and she felt herself being drawn out of the fabric. Mia's determination and kindness had broken the curse's hold. The shopkeeper, sensing the impending loss of another soul, lashed out with supernatural fury. But Mia stood her ground, her compassion and selflessness acting as a shield against his malevolence. With a final burst of magic, the shopkeeper was banished, and the cursed costumes that had trapped so many souls lost their sinister allure. The emporium of horrors crumbled, and the trapped souls were released, their gratitude and relief palpable. As the cursed costume shop disintegrated into a pile of fabric and dust, Lily emerged, free from the malevolent curse. She embraced Mia with tears of gratitude, knowing that it was her kindness that had saved her from an eternity of torment. Halloween night in Hollowvale would always be remembered as the night when the cursed costume shop was vanquished, a chilling reminder of the price of vanity and the danger of making deals with the unknown. The shopkeeper's reign of terror had ended, and the trapped souls could finally find peace, thanks to the compassion and selflessness of one kind-hearted soul. Story: The Ghostly Game Night. On a chilly Halloween night in the quiet town of Hollowvale, a group of friends had gathered at Emily's cozy home to celebrate their favorite holiday. The scent of pumpkin-spiced candles filled the air, and the room was adorned with eerie decorations. It was the perfect setting for a night of Halloween-themed games and laughter. The group consisted of Emily, Mike, Lisa, and Tom, a close-knit circle of friends who had always shared a love for the macabre. Halloween was their favorite holiday, and they relished the opportunity to celebrate it together. Little did they know that this Halloween game night would lead them down a dark and terrifying path. As the night wore on, the group decided to delve into an occult board game they had discovered in the attic. A game so old and mysterious that it had been buried away for generations. The board was intricately designed with strange symbols and runes, and the instructions were written in an ancient language. They couldn't resist the allure of the enigmatic game and decided to give it a try. They gathered around the table, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on their faces. The game was called Seance of the Damned, and its purpose was to communicate with the spirits of the departed. The friends chuckled nervously, thinking it was all in good fun as they lit the candles, placed their hands on the board's planchette, and began to recite the incantation. At first, nothing happened. The planchette remained still, and they exchanged skeptical glances. But then, as if in response to their doubts, it began to move. The planchette glided across the board, spelling out cryptic messages and answering their questions. It was a chilling experience, and a sense of unease settled over the group. The spirits they had summoned were vengeful souls, trapped between this world and the next. They had been awakened from their eternal slumber, and they were not pleased. Their messages grew increasingly ominous, and the atmosphere in the room shifted from curiosity to terror. The spirits revealed their tragic stories, their unfinished business in the realm of the living, and their desire for vengeance against the living. The group had unwittingly unleashed a malevolent force, and they soon realized that they were no longer in control. As the night grew darker, the spirit's presence became more pronounced. Eerie cold drafts swept through the room, and the candles flickered erratically. The friends felt an otherworldly chill in the air and heard whispering voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Mike, overcome with fear, suggested they put an end to the game. But the spirits were not ready to release their hold. The planchette continued to move on its own, spelling out horrifying threats and curses. The group was trapped in a sinister game of their own making, and there seemed to be no way out. Desperation gripped the friends as they realized the dire consequences of meddling with the supernatural. The spirits grew more malevolent with each passing moment, and they began to manifest in ghastly forms. Shadowy figures materialized in the corners of the room, their hollow eyes filled with malice. In a frantic attempt to break the curse, they tried to end the seance by extinguishing the candles, but it only seemed to anger the spirits further. The room plunged into darkness, and the friends were left in a void of terror, unable to see or comprehend the horrors that surrounded them. As they huddled together, the spirits closed in, their vengeful whispers growing louder. The friends could feel their icy breath on their necks, and their presence was suffocating. The malevolent spirits were intent on exacting their revenge on the living, and the friends were their unwitting targets. In their desperation, Emily remembered a phrase from the game's instructions, a phrase that could potentially break the curse. With trembling hands, she recited the words, "Release us from your grasp, let peace be our eternal path." As the words left her lips, a blinding light filled the room, and a deafening wail echoed through the air. The spirits were torn from their world, banished back to the realm of the dead. The room slowly returned to normal, and the friends were left in stunned silence, their hearts pounding with fear. They had narrowly escaped the clutches of the malevolent spirits, but the memory of that night would haunt them forever. Halloween night in Hollowvale had become a chilling reminder of the consequences of meddling with the supernatural and the price of curiosity. The friends had been tested by forces beyond their comprehension, and they had emerged from the ordeal forever changed, their skepticism replaced by a deep respect for the unknown.